Thank you so much to our wonderful and generous sponsors, Grubhub, our event host sponsor, and Ruben Digital, our friend of the associate board sponsor, since they are the reason all of our proceeds from tonight's ticket sales go directly to the clubs. Let's give it up for our generous sponsors. They can't hear you because you're muted, so clap in a circle on your camera to give them a round of applause. So a little bit about the associate board. Our members are Chicago area young professionals who share a common interest in making a difference in the lives of young people by generously offering their time, talents, and hosting fundraisers in support of the at-risk youth our clubs serve. Right now, the associate board is near capacity and has 2 open spots. We are also accepting members of our associate board council. The council is a way to stay connected and receive various benefits like discounted tickets and 2 in-person events without having associate board membership and being on a committee. The council has annual dues of $150. For more details about the associate board or associate board council, see the link posted in the chat now or email associateboard@ulbgc.org. I would like to recognize a few people that made this event happen. First, I would like to recognize my amazing wife, Margaret, who just finished her 2-year term as president of our associate board, and the amazing work she has done to grow the associate board and these events. She is also a Union League Boys and Girls Club trustee and former gala chair, and shout out to everyone on the gala committee. Save the date for our virtual gala, which will be on Saturday, November 7th. A big thank you goes to our new associate board president, Matt Bernardi, and all the work he has put into this event. And our other executive committee members, First Vice President Tom Bernardi, Second Vice President Erica Rickey, and Secretary Dylan Reynolds, who has also recently taken over for me as the chair of the Marketing and Communications Committee. And thank you so much to the ULBGC staff members that have helped make this happen, especially Logan Hageman and his team. I would also like to thank our summer events task force leaders, Erica Rickey and Kelly Tunnison, who did a great job coordinating this event and taking it from an in-person to virtual event seamlessly. And also to the task force members, Luke Bernardi and Laurel Arliss. And finally, I would like to recognize everyone who is on the associate board. Please wave right now if you're an associate board member so Nate Rubin can get a photo of you for Instagram. Thanks. One of the goals of this event is to spread awareness of the ULBGC. So we ask that you like and follow our clubs on social media and share posts that inspire you. Our Facebook and Instagram links will be posted in the chat. Please tag the ULBGC in any Instagram stories that you're posting during the event. We will repost it on our story. If you post anything on social media tonight about our event, please remember to use hashtag Brewing Brighter Futures and tag the ULBGC. And here's some great news. Logan, how much have we raised for our 50-50 raffle tonight?
Jake, we have raised just about $2,805.
That is amazing. As you know, the winner will take home half the pot, and the better news is that we will be selling raffle tickets for a few more minutes until about 6:20 p.m. The raffle drawing will be at around 6:40. First prize is half the cash we raise, so the more tickets you buy, the more you can win. Second prize is $100 Revolution Brewing Company gift card, plus 2 sets of the beer that we are drinking tonight. And third is a swag bag from Revolution Brewing Company that includes a hat, 2 glasses, a metal sign, and 1 set of beer. Both of these items were generously donated to us by Revolution Brewing Company in Logan Square. See the link in the chat right now to purchase. The tickets are 1 for $10 and 5 for $45. We'll start our night with the craft beer tasting, and later on, we have Jeremy Murphy, the Humboldt Park Area Barretto Club Director, speak to us about his experiences with the clubs and the importance of our Inglewood initiative. We hope you enjoy the event and, of course, the craft beer. But more importantly, we hope you enjoy yourself and walk away with some new insight into what the Union League Boys and Girls Clubs are all about and how you can help. Thank you, and remember, it's for the kids. Now I'd like to give a toast that has become a tradition at this event over the past 5 years. Let's all raise a glass and our drinks and toast to the kids. Now I'd like to introduce our beer expert and entertainment for the evening, Bruce White, who is the owner-operator of Chicago Beer Experience Tours and virtual happy hour beer tasting classes. Thank you for joining us tonight, Bruce.
Thank you so much, Jake, and thank you to the Union League Boys and Girls Clubs, the Associate Board, the Executive Committee, and everybody else that made this event possible. I'm super excited to be here tonight and talk some beer and history with you, and really appreciate having me on as part of this event for such a great cause as well. To introduce myself, my name is Bruce. I am the founder of Chicago Beer Experience Beer Tours. I started the company in 2011. We walk around to Chicago bars and breweries in different parts of the city. We combine local craft beer tastings with Chicago history in a really fun way. And obviously, with the COVID crisis, it's no longer advisable to take in up to 20 people, oftentimes strangers, into bars. So we've kind of taken this virtually. So we offer a virtual happy hour where I've taken some of my favorite stories from those tours and incorporated them into a virtual experience. And we're going to be doing a good portion of that tonight. So that's what we're going to be doing. To put this in perspective, or to give you just a little bit, and you'll see I'm like a very bad weatherman when it comes to it, what to kind of expect for tonight as we do these beer tastings. I'll get out of the way, hence my very bad weatherman. We're going to be tasting and learning about beer. We're going to be discovering fun facts about beer and Chicago history. And of course, most importantly, we're going to have fun. That's the big deal. The basic format, we're going to be covering 4 beer tastings where we'll kind of have beer and that specific tasting plus kind of general beer 101, and then finally incorporate some Chicago history or world history as well as part of that. So sound good? All right, righty rock. Hopefully you're thirsty. And by the way, there's no pressure to participate. Drink at your own pace. And we've had people on these classes drink wine, margaritas, water. We had somebody Vietnam log in at 7 a.m. and they drank coffee. And that's totally fine. It's really just a way, but to the extent that you do want to follow along, we'll be doing that. So, all right, let's get that first tasting out. So go ahead. And we have the Freedom of Speech from Revolution Brewing is the first one we're going to be tasting tonight. So get that ready. All right. Awesome. And if you have a glass, pour it in a glass. Now, you know, and we're going to be doing kind of the general tasting experience. You've probably done this if you've ever been on a wine tour, and sometimes you might have done this on a beer or brewery tour. But I know not that long ago when I was drinking beer, I would grab the coldest beer in the front of the fridge and drink it as fast as possible. Primarily my college days, there was a lot of natural light, natty light back in those days. But with this craft beer scene, there's the quality and variety of beer is so wonderful that sometimes it can be nice to pour it in a glass and really appreciate it. So when you pour it in a glass, go ahead. The first thing you're going to do is hold it up to the light. And you're going to notice different things. You're going to notice kind of the first thing, color of the beer. You're going to notice perhaps carbonation, whether it's clear or hazy.
Can we pour it in a glass?
All the rage these days. You know, you'll be able to say, some people say we drink with our eyes. So that's really an important part of the kind of the initial tasting experience. Next, you're going to go ahead and smell your beer. You can go the long sniff, the short sniff, or you can kind of just get right in there. Oh yeah. And when I was learning about how we perceive flavor, I bought a book, and I kind of made a mistake because it turns out how we perceive flavor happens in the brain. And I didn't understand half of the words in this book, but the big takeaway that I took was how important aroma is to our perception of flavor. To put this in perspective, we taste 6 things, but we smell over 10,000 different things. So it's crazy. If you've ever plugged your nose when you eat or drink something, you notice just how important this sense really is. It's a tremendously important part of the tasting experience. Then the best part, we're going to taste the beer. Pay attention to three particular parts. That initial impression as it first hits your lips, how, kind of the mouthfeel, not only the flavor as it's in your mouth, but also its viscosity as well. And then how does it finish? And you're going to notice that beers can vary in all different aspects of that. So cheers. Thanks again. First beer, it's Thursday. You've earned it. And for those of you at home, cheers to you. Oh, what a delicious beer. So a little bit more about this particular tasting. Revolution Brewing, freedom of speech. Lots going on with this. This is a session kettle sour. So we're kind of starting off a little complex when it comes to beer. There are a few things that I want that really make this unique. One is they sour the beer. So they do so with this particular beer by adding Greek yogurt. You might be like, what are you talking about? Well, Greek yogurt has lactobacillus, which is a bacteria and is one of the main methods that brewers will actually sour beer with. There are a couple different others, but that's one of the main ones. And it's going to impart kind of a sourness. So they do that. They add Greek yogurt to this beer when they're brewing it to get that bacteria in there. It's going to produce lactic acid. So that slight sour, that's really from that, making it very unique, really. And sour beers, by the way, in general, just continue to become more and more popular. I remember when we first had them on the beer tours back in 2012-13, people were like, get me out of here. And now it just has become, and some people, they're like, I love sours. That's my favorite style in a variety of ways. This one, again, really kind of on the lighter side. The sour is there, but it's not going to smack you over the head like some others will. So really nice. That's one thing that distinguishes is it's called a kettle sour because they're actually adding this in the stainless steel vats right behind me. And they'll make that, and it only takes usually just a few days to do so. Back in the day, if you go to like a lambic style, one of the oldest beer styles that you'll find, that was much more, it would take months, if not sometimes years, and they use wild yeast and kind of wait for it to come in there to impart those sour flavors. So really cool, modern technology allowing us. The other thing, freedom of speech with the peach kind of in there, that's because they use peach concentrate as well in this beer. And then they use a Saison yeast strain that makes it unique. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. So really nice. The reason it's called session is 4.5%. You can drink a lot of these in a single session, should you choose to do so. I call them lawnmower beers as well, if you will, because you can mow the lawn and drink one of these in a very refreshing. This should be a great summer beer. So really nice for hotter weather because it's crisp, refreshing, and that sourness kind of will cleanse the palate as well. So really, really nice. I hope you enjoy this Session Kettle Sour brewed by Revolution Brewing. Revolution, you probably all know Revolution, at least if you're around Chicago. They are Chicago's largest craft brewer now that since Anheuser-Busch bought Goose Island. And a few years ago, they actually came out with a study that more Chicagoans drank Revolution than any other brewery, including Goose Island. So they kind of became the biggest local brewery, if you will, or biggest brewery really for locals. Really nice. They started in 2010 in Logan Square and really as a brew pub, and then now have a huge production brewery as well over on Kedzie, and they're awesome. Top to bottom, a great, wonderful brewery, and we're going to be having another one of their beers to kind of wrap up the class later today as well. So awesome stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if they still led the way when it came to Chicagoans in terms of craft beer when it comes to that. So awesome. All right, first tasting in the books. Keep enjoying. I'm going to have another sip here. What a delightful way to start the tasting today. And, one thing to keep in mind as we kind of go through this is, how the flavors really can change, how varied beer really can be when you compare it to pretty much any other beverage. The range of flavors that you can really accomplish in these beers is just fantastic. So it's really, really fun and really interesting as well. So hopefully you enjoy it. Now, to get into a little beer history, we get the question a lot. When was beer discovered? When did it start? And nobody really knows for sure. The written records back then, not exactly the most keen, but most of people think that this started sometime around 10,000 years ago. Probably Tigris, Euphrates, somewhere in there. And birthplace of civilization, Middle East, maybe Africa, somewhere in that region of the world. And nobody knows how it was invented because of this lack of the written word. But people assume it was discovered probably by mistake. At least that's my favorite story, and the one that makes the most sense to me. You could see how this would happen. Nomadic tribes, hunting and gathering, picking wild grain. They put they pick it, put it in a bin. Somebody forgets to cover it, or perhaps the lids got knocked off. Who knows? And it rained. And then over time, the sugar from those grains seeped into the water. And then yeast occurs all around us. In fact, they used to think it was magic, right? Or God's will, and got in there and turned that sugary water into alcohol. Then perhaps there was a drought. Somebody drank it by mistake and then was like, oh yeah, we need to do this again right now. And it used to be thought that nomadic tribes settled down to cultivate grains to actually, I just want to interrupt my story right here. We've got the last call for the 50-50 raffle tickets. I tell you what, that pot to the extent it grows too, that's a lot of beer. So get your 50-50 tickets in and you'll be able to enjoy a lot more beer. I think they just dropped a link in the chat so you can do so before they close off that and pick the winner a little later on. So get your 50-50 tickets in. But going back to the story, they're picking wild grain, and it used to be thought nomadic tribes settled down to cultivate grain for the production of food. Why else would you give up what you've done for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years of human evolution, right? Hunting and gathering. When you settled down to cultivate grain, what did you need to do? You had to stay there. And to stay, then what did you need? Roads, schools, hospitals, civilization. I'm being somewhat facetious, but you understand my point. Basically, we settled down to cultivate grain. It was a huge event in human history in terms of how civilization developed. Well, everybody assumed it was for food, consistent food supply, makes sense. Not so fast. The first use of cultivated grain was likely for the production of beer. The archaeologists have actually gone and found these kind of remnants of these seeds that suggest it was brewing that was the reason we settled down to start civilization. No big deal, folks. Beer is responsible for this. No problem at all. So hopefully another reason to appreciate it. So there you go. And moving to the United States, just a real quick summary. Obviously, we had Native Americans, pre-European settlers coming here, and they would brew what we would loosely describe as beer, made with like black birch sap, persimmon, maize, those types of things. The British and the Dutch came over and brought a lot of their brewing, but we were really a whiskey country for a number of years. It was hard to get those consistent hops and barley for a long time. The average American male, this is one of my fun little favorite facts, drank 81 bottles of whiskey a year in the late 1890s. That's about a bottle every 4.5 days. Holy smokes. So probably not good for you. I'm no health expert, but probably not good. But thankfully, it was really kind of the German waves of immigration that came over in the 1800s that really launched beer to kind of its first significance heights here in the United States. And by the mid to late 1800s, there were over 4,100 breweries here in that time, making a previous high water mark. The 20th century was actually a bad time to be brewing beer here. You had Prohibition, 2 world wars and rationing, and then mass consumerism and mass consolidation in the industry. By 1978, we only had 89 breweries here. 89 down from 4,100 in the 1800s. And they were almost all producing lagers and light lagers. So there was really no distinction when it came to the marketplace there. So now this craft beer scene has really come on. And when I first started touring, we were 1,800 breweries in the United States, showing you kind of this exponential growth. And it didn't stop. The end of last year, over 7,500 breweries in the United States. We blasted through that 4,100 previous high water mark. And a lot of beer experts say that the best time to be drinking beer in human history is today in the United States. This craft beer scene, the quality and variety that we really have is pretty much unparalleled in human history. I mean, this year's been terrible. Let's not mince words here, but this is one of the things that helps me get through the year. Never been a better time in human history to drink beer. Cool stuff there. All right, folks, we're going to go to the next tasting. So if you would, go ahead and grab out the Half Acre Fader. Awesome. Give you guys a couple seconds here. Sorry. Chug your beers. I'm kidding. Don't do that. You drink at your own pace. I'm actually going to transfer this over. This is a beer from Half Acre. Half Acre and Revolution, I almost think about in kind of in that same level. Some of the earlier craft breweries here in Chicago, which shows you how new our scene really is here. And they contract brewed for a couple of years, started in 2006, had a brewery here, started up in Lincoln Square since, North Center since, on Lincoln, since 2008. And they have another big production brewery as well. And they brew some awesome beers. So they're a great, great brewery. So go ahead, take it up, hold this beer when you have it up to the light. Now the coloration is actually not that dissimilar to the first beer. It actually is somewhat surprising because the flavor is going to be so much different. Nice light, I'd say pale straw colored beer. So you kind of are prepping your brain to what you're going to be drinking. Next, you're going to go ahead and smell your beer. Oh yeah. This is a little more, I would say, standard when we think of beer, right? When it comes down to what the flavor you're perceiving, at least the aroma that I'm getting that hops and that malted barley. Delicious, delicious. And then, of course, taste. Cheers to you guys. All right. Oh, great. So I actually emailed with these guys because I was confused. They say a premium lager beer, but if you look at Untapped or previous press releases, that it was a Pilsner. And so I'm like, guys, what is it? Is it a Pilsner? Are you using adjuncts, different corn or rice or other things? Like, what's going on? They said, they got back to me. And so they said that no adjuncts in this. So it's still, in beer, by the way, 4 ingredients. We'll go into this a little bit. Water, malted barley, hops, and yeast. And so they don't add anything, but what they did was they dialed back the hops. They're like a Pilsner is supposed to have a pretty strong hop presence. We wanted to make something a little more drinkable. And so they scaled back that bitter bite that you get in those classic European Pilsners. And so this is a smoother beer. And it's delicious. It's easy drinking, meant for the summertime. You can imagine being in a park or, well, not these, you know what I mean? Normal times, being outside and enjoying this and being able to enjoy perhaps a couple of them if you'd like to do so. Easy drinking when it comes to that. So delicious beer from Half Acre, pretty based on kind of on a Pilsner style, but lower the hop content, so not as bitter as it usually would be if you had kind of a traditional European Pilsner. Which brings me a little bit, by the way, I just want to go through this. We get a lot of questions on what makes one beer different from another during these tours. And there's over 400 different styles of beer. It can be really overwhelming to know how to do that. I basically, the easiest way to wrap their head around it for me is to divide them into their 2 overarching categories. Your lagers, I'm a bad weather man, bear with me, and your ales. And the really big difference there is what family of yeast that is being used in the brewing process. Pre-1842, most of the beers that we drank in the world were of the ale variety, okay? And so they're brewing this. That's because ale yeast brew kind of at room temperature, a little cooler than that, and they didn't know what it was. The German purity law of 1516 identified, instead of those 4 ingredients, just 3. They left off yeast, thought it was magic or God's will, right? Please help me. This is before penicillin, microscopic things. We didn't really know what was going on. So they're doing this, and so it makes sense. It's not to say that lagers didn't exist. It's just if they did, they didn't even know it. And most would be probably ales back in those days. Well, in the town of Pilsen, they fired their brewmaster and hired this young gun who had rumors of these lagering techniques used up in the mountainside. Basically, these farmers would go up into these cool mountain caves, cooler temperatures over the hot European summers. And in those cooler temperatures, lager yeast came to kind of get into the beer. Lager is the German word for storage. So you can see that. So they're doing this. He did this for the first time on an industrial scale. And Pilsner specifically was the result. A specific type of lager, light, effervescent, champagne-like. Think of a hot summer day. We just had this premium lager beer from Half Acre, right? It's so refreshing, light, effervescent. It really started to dominate. Now 90% of the beers that we drink are of the lager style. So crazy swing from almost all ales to almost all lagers. The big difference in terms of family of yeast really have to do with that ale yeast impart extra stuff, like fruity esters, for example. If you've ever had a Hefeweizen, that big beer with a big frothy head, famous German, one of the few German ales, they have used Hefeweizen yeast imparts banana and clove flavors. Those fruitiness, I'm like, sometimes I have a Hefeweizen, I'm like, how'd they get banana in here? Yeah, it's the yeast. Kind of an extreme example, but it highlights that. Lagers tend to not produce extra stuff, so they tend to be cleaner in flavor. One style isn't necessarily better than another, but again, it just kind of, they're just different, and I think it's neat to understand those differences if you didn't already. Almost all other beer styles will flow through those two major styles. So again, it really helped me kind of wrap my head around what makes one different from another when it comes down to it. So make sense, guys? What do you think? Good stuff? All right, cool. Well, we are going to, I've got one little story, Chicago story for you today with this tasting that I want to share. Do you guys know what happened in Chicago in 1871? Any guesses? You can type it in the comments if you know it in the chat. Chicago Fire, Lisa, you win. Great job. And you've got it. Chicago Fire. Well, let me guess what? Little beer tie into this. Obviously, a huge destructive event in Chicago's history. They had this huge, terrible fire. It burned 4 square miles of the city, displaced 100,000 people, a third of the city's population. 10 to 15,000 structures were destroyed. It also destroyed 19 of our largest breweries. And so and the telegrams went out saying there's this terrible fire going on, and a brewery up in Milwaukee got wind of this, and they sent down beer immediately in a refrigerated rail car. And as the legend says, this beer arrived right as the flames were still being extinguished. I'm talking about ice cold Schlitz beer. For those of you who like Schlitz or know Schlitz. And so they had Schlitz here. Schlitz became one of the biggest brewers in the country for a long time, and it became kind of the Chicago beer for decades. Partly is appreciative for quenching the thirst after the fire. If you've ever been, they also had something pre-prohibition, tied houses. And if you've ever been to Schuba's on the north side, you might know what I'm talking about. There's this little orb up here. What's going on? I'll zoom in so you don't have to squint. That's the Schlitz orb. That's because Schlitz owned the bar outright. And so they had over 50 of these tied houses, a way to vertically integrate for breweries back in those days pre-prohibition. Now we have the 3-tiered model post-prohibition, where the breweries and alcohol producers generally can't own the place where you consume it outright. You have to go through a third-party distributor. So interesting stuff. And if you ever walk around, there's 9 of them. You can go on a little treasure hunt sometime when you're in Chicago of these. They're not all necessarily bars still, right? There's other uses for them, but I know a lot of people know Schuba's there as well. So a little Schlitz Chicago Fire tie-in for you. I am actually now going to pass it back over to Jake, and we will go from there, and we'll do the next 2 beers in just a little bit.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Bruce. We on the associate board know that we, and even the delicious beer, are not the focus of tonight. The kids are who we are here for, and would like to introduce someone very special who works with the kids every day and who was a club kid himself. We have asked him to share about his experience with the clubs and our progress with the Inglewood Initiative. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the director of the Barretto Club in Humboldt Park, Mr. Jeremy Murphy.
Yes, indeed, Jake. Thank you. My name is Jeremy Murphy, and I am the Director of Club Services for the Barretto Club. First and foremost, I'd like to say thank you all for your time today and the opportunity to share the mission moments. It means so much to us that you are still stepping up to support what we do. Here is the reality. I'm pretty sure that many of you may be struggling during these difficult times, adapting to COVID-19. On our end, with over 15,000 kids out of school, a few things have increased within the families that we serve, from my perspective. The amount of members facing food insecurities has increased. The educational gaps has gotten wider, and the need for more mental health support services are now greater than ever. Majority of our members, they reside in neighborhoods that have been hit the hardest by COVID-19, with little to no resources to maintain an adequate lifestyle. But there is an upside. The Union League Boys and Girls Club are now back open, and we are serving our members in many different ways. Virtual platforms, Zoom, Google Classroom, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. Most importantly, as of July 6th, we have managed to reopen our sites on a smaller scale with safety protocols in place. Respect the social distancing guidelines. As of this fall, the clubs will be open from 8 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. instead of 3:30 p.m. through 8:30 p.m. to serve our families during school hours, because we know how important it is for our members to receive support during their first quarter of e-learning. Talk about fitting right in between the gaps. Our clubs are currently serving youth in some of Chicago's toughest neighborhoods and growing our footprint on a daily basis. Inglewood clubs are the newbies to the organization. We opened our first site in 2015 at an elementary school, serving a little under 300 members. Currently, we have grown our membership to 1,009 youth and teens across 4 school sites. This is huge when you look at the data. Inglewood has the highest violence rate out of all neighborhoods in the city. Their current household income is $21,000, and 44% of those parents have successfully completed high school. So I asked, where's the other 50%? COVID-19 has only exposed how under-resourced this community really is. It is because of this, I believe, the Union League Boys and Girls Club decided to grow its footprint in Inglewood to continue to service all kids who need us most. I myself started attending the clubs when I was 6 years old, and the clubs has truly shaped the man that I am today. Growing from being a club member to being the director speaks volumes to what this organization has been able to do with the right amount of resources. Being one of 9 siblings raised by a single mom, it was extremely tough, and the pressure was real, daily. Navigating through a neighborhood that treated violence like it was a sport and sold drugs from sun up to sundown, the club truly was the only way out for me. The club provided nourishment. The club provided a sense of belonging. The clubs empowered me to understand that anything was possible no matter my circumstances. The club was pivotal in my upbringing as a child. So now, as an alumni of the Union League Boys and Girls Club and the director of the Barretto Club, I am in a unique position to share the impact of our organization in changing the trajectory for kids in Chicago. It is the community that lifts our members on a daily basis. It is the community that lifted me as a young, troubled kid. I leave you all with this. The greatest strength of a team is measured and revealed when it is tested the most. I'll say it again. The greatest strength of a team is revealed and measured when it is tested the most. When you are at your weakest point, how will you respond is the question. We were tested. For a period of time, the Boys and Girls Clubs in Humboldt Park, Inglewood, Pilsen was not operating in the physical form, but we still managed to feed over 100,000 families during our time away in the midst of a pandemic. We were able to continue to do what was needed for our communities, for our staff, and for our members. To me, nothing speaks louder than being a part of the solution and being on a winning team than this. On behalf of this organization, I want to say thank you all for your support and give yourselves a round of applause and another toast because you are contributing to Mission Moments. Thank you all.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, so very much, Jeremy, for sharing today. Thank you for what you do and the inspiration that you provide to everyone around you. If you want to learn more about specific opportunities with the Union League Boys and Girls Clubs, feel free to private message the ULBGC account via Zoom at any time during this event or email associateboard@ulbgc.org. Next, we will announce our raffle winners. Everyone who purchased raffle tickets has been assigned a random number for each of their tickets, and our staff member Logan used a random number generator to choose those winners. And now for the winners. Logan, do we have those ready?
Yes, we do, Jake.
Awesome. All right. The third prize winner of the Revolution Brewing Company swag bag is who?
Todd Sirlong.
All right, Todd Sirlong, congratulations. The second prize winner of the $100 Revolution Brewing Company gift card, it goes to
Chris Doskas.
All right, congratulations. Drum roll, please.
Give me 1 second, Jake. Of course.
Oh, just building the drama.
The winners of the raffle pot are Lionel and Mary Go.
All right, a twofer. Nice. Congratulations. The winners will be contacted shortly to arrange to receive their prizes. And now let's send it back to Bruce for more beer. But first, another toast to the kids. Take it. Oh yeah. How much did it? Hold on. My wife just yelled from the other room and asked, how much did they win? Logan, how much did they win?
So the full pot, Jake, was $3,005 exactly. So, 1,500 or $1,502.50, assuming
Awesome.
my mental math was correct.
Yeah. Also, if you have questions, we are going to have a question and answer for Bruce after the next two tastings. Also, don't feel pressured to drink 4 beers in an hour. That's another thing. But please write your questions in the chat, and we can answer, or Bruce will answer those a little later. But anyways, take it away, Bruce. Let's have some more beer, and let's do another toast. So get the ball rolling again to the kids.
All right, to the kids. I'm going to use my can right before I open up my next tasting here. And thank you also to Jeremy. That was a really inspiring speech as well. And obviously, such an excellent cause. So thanks again. And would love to move to this first of the third tasting, first of the second grouping. I have the Brickstone Permanent Vacation India Pale Ale. So if you have that, or if you have an IPA, choose that. If not, no worries. Join and listen in. And again, a lot of times he said you don't have to drink 4 beers in an hour. A lot of times I just do little, my little glass here, and then I'll save some if my wife enjoys some of my leftovers when I'm over, and I might have a little more with dinner or something. So no pressure when it comes to chugging these beers. So this next beer, I'm going to pour it in a glass. Oh, and I tell you, so this one also relatively pale in color. although there's a little haze in there. Nothing crazy. Then you're going to go ahead and smell the beer. Oh, and when you smell these beers, India Pale Ales, you know the price of poker is about to go up. So that's one thing that's going to get it. You're really getting that hop presence when it comes to these beers. It's just awesome. So that bitterness, but also citrus and floral notes as well. And the aroma of hops is just wonderful. So enjoy that. And then, of course, taste the beer. Cheers to you guys. Thank you again. Awesome. So this is the Brickstone Permanent Vacation, is the one that I'm tasting specifically. That's a part of you who chose to do so. Brickstone's a great brewery, Bourbonnais out in the burbs, and they started in 2006. They have both a brew pub and production brewery now, but they're both out there. And they've made some excellent beers. They've won some medals at the Great American Beer Festival, the most prestigious in the country, and are definitely a wonderful brewery that we have in the Chicagoland area. And the suburb, we have, I'm more familiar, in total honesty, with some of the city breweries, but the suburban breweries are really brewing some amazing beers. I would say that some of the sexier breweries these days are out in the suburbs versus in the city, although the city also has amazing breweries as well. So it's awesome. We have, depending on who you talk to, we have over 200 breweries in our metro area. If you kind of go up to carve out a little Wisconsin, a little Indiana, it's cheating maybe a little bit, but maybe not. And so it's one of the densest, kind of most amount of breweries of any metro area in the United States. It's really great to be drinking here. So again, Brickstone Permanent Vacation India Pale Ale. So this is a single hopped IPA, and I'm going to kind of come back. Let me circle around because I want to talk about IPAs generally. Then I'm going to circle back to this one and hope, but feel free to enjoy. So behind me, I've got hops. Hops are the bud of a flower that grow on a perennial vine. And again, responsible that they're supersized here. They're about that big, and they are used for bitterness, also citrus and floral notes. India Pale Ale. What's going on with that name? What's the scoop? Well, the British used to govern India. And when they did, they would send beer on their tall ships. If you were a member of the British Navy, you got a ration of beer up to a gallon a day to drink. You might think that's a little indulgent from these British sailors, but throughout almost all of human history, beer is safer to drink than water. One of the reasons beer has become the third most consumed beverage in the world behind coffee and tea, it's beer. And again, it's that safety issue. So they're drinking beer along that. Well, the 3-month voyage along the equator, the beer would often go stale before it arrived. So what did the British do to combat this? They made a stronger beer, more alcoholic, with more hops. Hops were first used in the 800 ADs, and they were used, before that you'd use kind of whatever was around, herbs and other things like dandelion, mint, horehound juice. If you were by the seashore, you might use crab claws or oyster shells, that sort of thing. Oyster stout is still kind of an homage to that. Hops became ubiquitous over the centuries because not only is that bitterness and citrus and floral notes a nice counterbalance to the sweetness of the malted barley, but it also helps preserve beer, antimicrobial qualities as well. So super important, unlike those other herbs. So they add more hops to better preserve on that journey. They name it after that journey, India Pale Ale. These, I think it's a great story only because it describes these beers tend to be higher in alcohol and hoppier than a lot of styles. Of course, the Americans, we've gotten involved on this, and we have made them even hoppier and more alcoholic in a lot of ways than our European counterparts. A lot of times, if you go to the UK and order an IPA, you'll be kind of surprised by how subtle and reserved they can be. I think there's a lot of reasons to that, and they're much debated, but one of the reasons, 1978, only 89 breweries in the United States, almost all brewing lagers and light lagers. What's one brewer style that they want a lot of flavor? They want the opposite, right? If you're there, one style of beer that you can come in is to just add in a lot of, make it alcoholic, add a lot of hops. Hops add a lot of flavor. Great question that I'm just going to address right now. What do IBUs mean? And how do you read them? So IBUs stand for International Bittering Units, and it's really the scale we use to judge beers. It goes from 0, meaning no hops or low hops, and to over 100. And once you get over 100, the palate, distinguishing those, and there used to be kind of an arms race on who made the most bitter beer in the world. But, a lot of IPAs are going to be somewhere in the 50 to 70 range. And of course, the closer they go up to 100, they will, the more bitter they're going to be perceived. This one is 55. So I would say this one's pretty middle of the road, if not even a little on the lower side when it comes to IBUs, but you're still getting that nice hop presence. By the way, just to want to quickly address it, hazy IPAs started in Vermont in 2012. They've become all the rage. They basically take the hops out from the beginning of the process and put them in toward the end of the brewing process, which highlights the fruity, juicy, tropical and citrus and floral notes of the hops versus the bitterness of the hops. So a lot of times, so that's just a trend that I wanted to address. This one's not hazy, but you're getting that. And this one is single hop with Citra hops. Citra hops are a single hop variety that have become very, very popular. And they are tropical fruit. Another beer that uses a lot of Citra hops is Zombie Dust. You might have had that from Three Floyds. This one, brewers sometimes will do single hop beers to just highlight that hop. So there. Another question real quick, double IPA, triple IPA. I mean, loosely double the ingredients, triple the ingredients. It's not exactly the case, but you're bumping that up. So you're getting more alcohol because you're adding in more malted barley and more hop presence because you're adding in more hops. Because of that malt bill, they don't necessarily, sometimes they're not even necessarily perceived to be as bitter, even as a regular IPA. But great question. It just double or triple, kind of the easy way to conceptualize it in a basic inference. So good questions. Good stuff. This one also, so great stuff. I know, by the way, I wanted to say also, there's some people, they drink an IPA and they're like, I hate this stuff. Well, you either love or hate these beers, generally speaking. Well, you're not crazy if you hate it. We can taste 6 things, and one of them is bitterness. And to be totally, and so in our hunting and gathering days, bitter things were more likely than other things to be poisonous. So your brain is hardwired to not like bitter things. So if you don't like these beers, you're sane. If you like them, you're a little crazy. How do you like these beers, by the way? It's pretty simple. You have to rewire the brain to like IPAs and bitter beers. How do you do that? Drink a lot of it. Okay, just keep drinking, folks. I guarantee it is an acquired taste. I remembered for 2 years, I hated these beers. I had graduated college, and I'm like, who drinks this stuff? Now I bathe in it, right? I love these India Pale Ales. I remember I was like, I have a taste for an IPA. I can't believe it. And that's really, it's an acquired taste, just like a lot of things when it comes down to it. So really, really nice, delicious. I'm loving this beer. It's 6% and 55 IBUs. This is a real approachable IPA, and you're getting I am getting a lot of that tropical fruit. They specifically call out grapefruit and pineapple on the can, and I'm definitely kind of getting out some of that as well. So hopefully you enjoy it. Cheers to you. Another little drink here. And if you're drinking it, let us know what you think. Dump your comments in the chat. And feel free to chime in and see what let us know what you think of these beers. It's always interesting because everybody perceives flavor so differently, and there are a lot of strong flavors and different flavors when it comes to beer. So it's fun to kind of check that out. So good stuff. Okay, do you guys know? Another question for you. Do you know what happened in Chicago in 1893? You guys should know this. So if you don't, I'm questioning your Chicago bona fides. World's Fair, Mark, you won. Thank you, Mark. You've got it. The World's Fair, we had 1893, big deal. If you've ever heard or read the book Devil in the White City, you know that in Chicago, one of the stars on our flag, just like the fire, was because of that fair. It helped put us back on the map after that Chicago fire, and really put us on the world stage. World's fairs were a big deal back then. Now we're kind of like, what's going on? They were kind of like the Olympics, hosting the Olympics without the athletic competition, but all these countries would come in, they'd have these like tech booths, and you could show off stuff when you're doing there. So they're doing the fair, and this white city, in the Eiffel Tower debuted at the Paris World's Fair in 1889, just a few years prior. And over 1 million people a day would sometimes be visiting the White City in Chicago during that time. Think about it, 1800s, people traveling from all over the world to go to this thing, travel pretty difficult back in those days. So just shows you how big of a deal this really was. The world's first Ferris wheel debuted here, other things. Guess what, folks? They had a beer hall. They built a big beer hall, over 4,100 breweries here, and they had a beer competition as part of the fair. So you go to this beer hall. Can you imagine going back to that? And so don't read Nancy's comment, by the way. Nancy, I'm not happy. I'm joking. So they're going, and so they have this beer hall. In keeping with the camaraderie spirit, they did not award outright winners. As long as you met a minimum grade of your beer, you got a ribbon. Now, I'm an old millennial, but I appreciate my participation trophy. If I show up for something, I want to be applauded for it, with my avocado toast and my iced coffee, come on. And so they're doing this, and so they as long as you kind of met that minimum threshold, well, the two biggest brewers said no way, because they knew the value of marketing if they won the World's Fair. So they went outside the official competition, started bribing beer judges the Chicago way. And when the dust settled, Pabst beat Anheuser-Busch by one random point. They named their beer after that win, the Blue Ribbon Beer. Nancy, here you go. And you'll see it next time you have a can, 1893, right on the label. Every now and then you'll see with my skinny jeans, it's not a pretty sight drinking one of these things. They're just what, but it's actually a great beer, and for being an American lager. And by the way, real quick aside, American lagers, what's going on there? American lagers and light lagers. We get, what makes PBR different from a Pilsner, for example, or even the Fader, that premium lager that we had earlier? Well, little history for you. Back in the 1800s and early 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s especially, competition in brewing in the United States was fierce. And a couple real quick interesting stories. See, I go on tangents. I love this stuff. If you went to a bar in the 1880s through right before Prohibition, you would be ordering a nickel beer. Didn't matter where you were in the country. If you went in a bar, you'd get a nickel beer. And it was up to the bar owners to determine the size of glass of that nickel beer. So that would be how they would try to exclude or get profit from that. Pretty interesting, right? Of course, you can only do so much there. And so there was pressure on brewers to brew cheaper and cheaper beers so that, the margins could make sense for everybody. You go and get your nickel beer. And so the brewers, to cheapen the process, added adjunct ingredients. Barley was a little more expensive to grow compared to corn and rice. And so you have the birth of the American lager. And most of the time it's corn. Some Anheuser-Busch famously used rice. And so they would add these to kind of cheapen the process of brewing beer. And that's really, nowadays when I drink these beers, I can almost taste the corn syrupy kind of sweetness to them because of that. It's not necessarily makes them bad, by the way. It's just a preference, right? It's just a difference in flavor. Interesting. I thought you'd guys like to know that. PBR, World's Fair, Chicago history, 1893, all happened here. Ready to rock? Okay, folks, our last tasting of the evening as we kind of wrap up here. Oh yeah, go ahead and get your Eugene Porter out. So this beer is wonderful. It's actually named after Eugene Debs, an American Union leader and activist who led the Pullman rail strike in 1894. A little progressive activism by my friends from Revolution. And with that, if you know the fist label there, shouldn't be surprised when it comes to it. So wonderful, again, wonderful beer from a wonderful brewery. Hold on one sec, I'm just going to... So I'm going to pour this beer into my glass, and wow, beautiful, beautiful, talk about a difference, right? And this is one of the many reasons I love beer. Again, the range of kind of different things you can do with them, different flavors, different qualities that you can really have from these beers is wonderful. So beautiful dark color when it comes to these beers. Next, smell the beer. Oh yeah. Getting some of those roasty, toasty notes, coffee, chocolate, that types of things. And then, cheers to you. Oh, what a great way to end. So this is, these are great beers. I'm going to circle back to the Eugene Porter in just a second, but I'm going to start by talking malted barley because it dovetails into this real quick. So malted barley, a cereal grain grown like corn or oats. If you've ever had Great Nuts cereal, you've had malted barley. And so they do this, they use this to one of the 4 ingredients of beer: hops, yeast, water, malted barley. So when they first pick it, it has a hard outer shell and it's very bitter to the taste. So they do this process called malting, where they basically go and there'll be a maltster right by where they grow it. The brewers won't do this directly. And they'll put it in these big rooms and they'll allow it to grow for 36 to 72 hours. Not very long. You're not even going to see any green shoots or anything. It's just to convert those starches to sugars and make change some of those enzymes, make it more accessible to the brewing process. Then, importantly, to stop that, you're going to kiln the barley. And this is tremendously important when it comes to how we flavor and how we do things. Think about food. You grill a steak, right? The Milliard chemistry. You grill veggies on the grill, or brown veggies, or other things that you'll cook. We do this all the time. Think of a loaf of bread. You can eat a piece of the bread right from the loaf, or you can take it and you can toast the bread lightly, medium, get some of those amber colors, or even burn it, getting some of those dark kind of things from the burnt kind of flavors. Similar things are true with malted barley. So you can kiln it lightly, or you can roast it almost like you would a coffee bean. Little historical story. We're going to go also back to the UK. And the UK, in this pre-industrial evolution, a lot of the beers they made, they were kilning with wood, and they created just kind of a darker barley. And so a lot of the ales they were brewing at the time were dark in color. Well, then the Industrial Revolution came, and this changed things. There was a byproduct of coal called coke. It burned really, really hot, and it was allowed them to kiln barley at less amount of time at really high temperatures, creating a paler malted barley. They started making English bitters and pale ales with this. And this was kind of the cool beer, right? So it was more expensive, and the middle class and the upper class of British society started drinking this stuff. Well, the tens of thousands of river porters working on the River Thames were taking all the freight, very blue-collar job, tough job. They didn't mind, after a hard day's work, going to the pub and paying less for the darker beers that had fallen out of favor. That's how porter gets its name. Named after the river porters working on the River Thames during the era of industrialization in the UK. I think that's a neat story and describes kind of how that started. Now, it used to be that a stout was a strong porter, stout. These days, those styles have kind of done this over the times. In fact, if you want to go down an internet rabbit hole, Google, what is the difference between a porter and a stout? People get really mad, and they have very strong opinions, and it's changed. A great example of this, and I've been seeing that kind of the chat just glancing at it, Guinness Irish Stout is one of the lightest beers you can drink. I oftentimes think people get intimidated, and they're like, these beers are going to be so heavy and so, bitter and whatnot. A lot of times they're not very hop heavy. Most of the time. And then also, they can be quite light. Guinness is about the same as a Miller Lite, Bud Light, or your American Light lagers. I had a buddy in college make a lot of money kind of in beer drinking competitions because he'd choose Guinness and he would win because of that. There you go. Little tip for you. Next time you're out in a competition. And so they're doing it. But these beers, if you put a gun to my head and you said, what is the difference between a porter and a stout? The big difference is if you stouts tend to use more roasted barley, creating more coffee-like flavors and maybe a little more astringency, whereas porter tends to use a lot more chocolate malt, which is not quite roasted but still very dark, creating somewhat ironically, because I guess more chocolate-type flavors in those beers, and is a little sweeter. And I think this does a nice job of encapsulating the style. Now this one is 6.8%, so it's not terribly light. It is, however, delicious. So I hope you guys enjoy this. A lot of times, these might not be good, necessarily perfect summer beers, but I still think they're a great nightcap. If you have a big meal, you want a coffee, and you don't want the caffeine, this can be a nice replacement. Dessert beers, they pair well with a lot of desserts, that sort of thing. And then, of course, the wintertime, they're just great fireside beers, too. So I hope you guys enjoy it. I think a lot of times there's another love-hate. But the more and more that people try these, I think the more they wrap their head around the flavors and enjoy them and put them as part of the repertoire when it comes down to it. So good stuff. One more cheers to you. Okay. Well, we're going to wrap up with one little more story. And I can't, leave a beer tasting without talking about old Scarface himself. This is Al Capone, Big Al. And I'm going to just cover some very light basics when it comes to Prohibition history. Here in Chicago, it was obviously extremely impactful here. Prohibition, organized crime, by the way, it really pre-existed Prohibition, but Prohibition shot organized crime to drastically new heights because of all of the money that they could make with the illegal booze trade. To put this in perspective, a keg of beer, and Prohibition lasted, by the way, from 1920 to 1933, 13-year period where Prohibition was in effect. Yikes. So and so again, plenty of time for that black market to develop and for people to make a lot of money. A keg of beer went from $50 in today's dollars in 1919 to over $650 overnight, showing you again how much money there was to be made during this process. So organized crime, the mob, if you will, kind of bought up a whole bunch of breweries, a lot of times under fronts. They would make the near beer in the front, near beer 0.5%. The max allowed by the Volstead Act is the 18th Amendment was codified into law. And 0.5%, that's what we call non-alcoholic beer this day. If O'Doul's has 0.5%, right? So good luck. You will die of water poisoning before feeling any impacts of the booze when it comes to near beer. So they'd make near beer, try to sell it. It didn't sell very well. They would also do something called needle beer. You'd have a can of beer. They'd have a government label. And it'd say 0.5%. They'd take a syringe full of grain alcohol and ginger ale and inject it underneath that label. You can imagine how great it tastes. It didn't taste very good at all, apparently. In fact, mob beer was notoriously nasty. Where else were you going to go? That was the only show in town, so you had to drink it. So they're doing this near beer. If the feds, and they brew illegal beer too, and if the feds, prohibition agents or the cops showed up, they would threaten them, bribe them, dump it down the drain, sneak it out the back, variety of different methods they could do so. A couple Capone stories for you. He became the leader in 1925 of the most powerful South Side gang in Chicago. And he quickly started to he was very well known. A lot of times when you do illegal activities, you want to keep a low profile, but he was very gregarious. He had his home base at a hotel in downtown Chicago for a number of years. Also was in Cicero, even Florida for a little bit when the heat got too hot. And then he would, by the way, his organization was pulling in about $1.4 billion a year at its peak. And his net worth is estimated in today's dollars at about 1.3 billion. He did this all before the age of 33, making me feel like a complete loser. And so he's doing this. And so they're selling beer. And he was, again, very, very public, very, very gregarious, apparently very nice if you were on his good side. He would go out to the Arlington racetrack and lose about $60,000 a week betting on the ponies. He was apparently terrible at gambling. And then another quick little story that I love for Capone, he actually loved the Cubs, and he would go and watch the Cubbies. This is him at Wrigley Field. That's Machine Gun Jack McGurn, one of my other favorite mob names of the era, and some of his older well-known associates. And then this right here is a newspaper clipping. This is in 1930, right before he went away. Him, his son, talking to a ball player right there. Those are his bodyguards in the back in the fedoras. They look intimidating. It's one of my favorite photos. We actually think about how embarrassing this was for the United States. All of this stuff going on, very, very embarrassing. How's Prohibition going? Well, not well, right? You have a well-known, everybody knew who he was, and he's in the papers, going to ball games. They can't touch him. And so there was actually a telegram sent from Major League Baseball to Wrigley Field. And they said, can you please tell Mr. Capone he's no longer allowed at Wrigley Field? They sent a telegram back, and they said, you tell him. They were not going to tell Capone that he could not come to Wrigley. Now, this was a year after the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. That put the heat on him. He finally was brought down. Does anybody know? Type it in the comments if you know how they got Capone. Taxes. You got it, Mark. Tax evasion. That's how they brought him down. He spent time in Alcatraz, among other places, and then was released because of health reasons and died of syphilis. Yikes. So with that really bright end there, I just want to thank you guys so much. That kind of wraps up my segment for tonight. You guys were awesome. I hope you enjoyed the beer tastings and some of those stories, maybe learned a thing or two, some of those fun facts. We are offering these classes virtually. So if you have a group of friends, family, corporate events, it's been awesome. And really anything, we can put something together for you. So check us out at www.chicagobeerexperience.com. And anything from the website, the info at if you fill out the contact form, it comes to me. I'm the only one. So I will be happy to get in touch with you and help you out for anything that you need. But regardless, it was truly a pleasure. And thank you again to the Union League Boys and Girls Club. I'm going to pass it back to Jake.
Hello. Now, very good. Thank you so much, Bruce. We do have some question and answer. Also, I was under the impression that Al Capone was a Sox fan because he was on the South Side. He got the South Side Italians and the North Side Irish gangs warring in there. We could, I digress there, but I maintain, we can argue till we're blue in the face, but I maintain that Al Capone's a Sox fan, not a Cubs fan. Anywho, we do have some questions for you from the general public on the call today. First one goes back to the first tasting about the sours. Are there any other sours or similar ones in the making that you're excited about, or possibly from Rev Brew that you know of?
Great question. And I do think that Revolution has another, at least I want to say it's like a blackberry inspired sour. I think the Freedom of Speech became their most popular one, so that's the one that they're really riding. But I do think they have a series where they have some other ones that might come out maybe more limited. So you just want to check with the website and check with them and just see. A lot of times they might do it for a few months or half a year and then switch to a different one. I know Distill, which is downstate, does a lot of sours. I would say that they were one of the first to get on board. And a lot of breweries are brewing them now, but a lot of times I would say like sours, I think it's somewhat rare to find year-round sours. A lot of times they're kind of seasonal and quick hitters, a lot of times in the summertime. I will say like American sours, from what I have seen, Jolly Pumpkin, somebody dropped that in the link. That's a great one. Thank you. A Michigan brewery, and they have a Hyde Park location as well in South Side of Chicago that you can check out. Thank you, Jennifer, because you're absolutely right. They brew amazing sours. So that's another one to check out. Great question. Sorry, I'm like all over the place, but I would say check out, just keep, hunting for them because they are a lot of fun.
Awesome. Yeah. Also, you may have answered this, so just wanted to double check because it was put in the chat. What does it mean to be a double IPA or a triple IPA?
Yeah. I think I briefly touched on it, but like the easiest way to think about it is double or triple the ingredients, because and so you're getting that higher alcohol content. It's not like double the alcohol content because it's not a 1-for-1 relationship when you do that. But you get more alcohol and you get, sometimes, again, a lot of times they will be a little more bitter, but because they double the malted barley as well, it's not necessarily the case. when it comes to it. But they just tend to be bigger, is how I would best describe them. So you're going to see double IPAs in the, sometimes, certainly a lot of times north of 7 and sometimes north of 8 or 9. And then triple, rarer style, but, similar concept.
Yeah, I know Half Acre's Daisy Cutter is a very popular one, and they have the double Daisy Cutter. I don't know.
Double Daisy. Yeah, double Daisy's great.
Good Lord. For me, it just tastes like fresh cut grass. But that's a lot of people's favorite thing. They love to hit it with the hops. Yep. But anyways, someone asked about, can you talk about alcohol content ratios?
Alcohol content ratios. I'm not quite sure. Sorry if I'm not sure I quite understand that. Most beers will range from, the lightest beers usually, are going to be around 4%. And then the heaviest beers are usually, the barrel aged, Goose Island has some of the best barrel aged beers around. And actually Revolution has a great barrel aged series as well. They usually can get up north of 14, maybe even 15%. So that's kind of the range that you'll see. So it's a pretty big range. And then every now and then there'll be breweries that try to sneak above that. A lot of times they have to use techniques like, freezing it and scraping off the ice to get it even higher than that. So.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. I remember there was one that I drank in college in Michigan, Founders Brewery had an Old Dirty Bastard. It's like 13% up there, way up there. Anyways, so yeah, it was. Yeah, I guess it was more. Someone expanded on it. Like, how are those made, and what? Well, I guess you kind of touched on it. How are those made, and what gives beer more or less alcohol?
It's the real driver of malted barley is the sugar. And most beers will derive that from what the malted barley is. So it's really how much malted barley you use. The more malted barley you use, the more alcohol content you will get because there's more sugar for those yeast to ferment.
Okay, great answer. Awesome. Okay, one thing, I'm actually going to interject something. Someone asked, what's your favorite brewery that we have not heard about yet? And what are your favorite local breweries in general? I happen to love one that's also in Logan Square, just like Revolution Brewing Company. Maplewood Brewing Company is one of my favorite breweries. They actually serve it. Their Son of Juice IPA is on tap at the Union League Club. FYI, very good. But they're going to do a beer tasting. The Union League Club is going to do a tasting for it on September 10th. So look out for that. Just plug for that. But anyways, what's your new up and comers that you enjoy?
I'll tell you what, I think that Maplewood, I'll give you a lot of credit because they're in my top 5. I think Maplewood's super legit. I for the lager breweries, I love Dovetail. Dovetail I think has a lot of love and a lot of it's deserved. They'll make the flavors that you obtain from their lagers that are a lot of times relatively low in alcohol are really impressive. And, Metropolitan is another great lager brewery too. So I love them as well. I like On Tour over in the West Loop. I think, On Tour is one of those that is kind of under the radar and has, but just is consistently good at everything they do. And so that's another one that I'm kind of keeping my eye on. Burnt City has really stepped up their game. God, I could go on and on. Sorry, it's funny. I always top 5, and I end up naming like 30 breweries. But
there's so many in Chicago, and I think it's a testament. And it's really all over. I always blame it on the Great Lakes. That's why there's so many great Michigan, Chicago, Ohio, Indiana. We have such good water. We make such great beer. It's so good. And to expand on what you were saying about Dovetail is one of my favorite if you like German. But they also share a actual parking lot with Beguile Brewery. And I've been to a couple of joint events that they've had together and they did this was before the world ended, and we could do events, but they would do an Oktoberfest together where they'd have food trucks and whatnot going on. Anyways, I'm talking too much. You should be talking more.
No.
Moving on to the next question. Why aren't cask beers as popular in the United States?
Great question. I actually met a guy at an Illinois Craft Brewers Guild meeting probably about 5 years ago who was like, mission from God was to make cask ales a thing here. So I had a long, in-depth conversation. And, you know, the issue with cask ales is they just demand a lot of work, and they demand kind of a different setup than, you know, you're going to have. If you have a bar, you're not necessarily going to have a cask line and and then not only that, you know, if you go into cask ales, there's a real, I forget the exact name, but there is a real kind of cask, like a person who takes care of that. There's like an art form that is like this learned trade that you have to, you know, to be able to really nail that cask and to make sure that, you know, you're rotating, you know, that it doesn't settle, that it stays as fresh as it can for as long as it can, that it pours right and correctly. So I think that it's a real challenge because the investment is just going to be excessive compared to consumer demand. That's kind of the easiest way to think of it. And for those of you that don't know, cask ales, really a British inspired thing where you just kind of brew beer and you put it in casks. It's naturally fermenting. So they will put some, you know, unfermented beer in to top it off, let that yeast kind of still activate, and then that will supply the natural carbonation. And then you just literally tap the cask, and that's what you're getting beer out of. So it's really neat and really cool and delicious, but it's just hard to pull off, I think, in the United States.
Awesome. Okay, wow, this is very general. What's your favorite beer all time? Favorite beer?
Oh, I just punt on this question all the time because I'm such a seasonal drinker, and I like to try new things all the time. God,
it's
it's
like
so
choosing between your children, right?
right. I would say that you actually named one of my favorites, Son of Juice. I would also say Apex Predator from Off Color. Oh, there's another brewery, by the way, that I forgot all, but now think they're one of my favorites, especially for your farmhouse ales.
You actually mentioned one of my top favorite beers, Zombie Dust.
Yeah.
From Three Floyds. Although it is in Indiana, it's very close, right over the border. And oh man, do I love that.
Yep.
IPA.
Totally. Yeah, so I'm sorry to punt, but yeah, there's so many, and that's the great thing. It's hard to choose. I mean, it's wonderful
Yes.
problem to have.
We do have many to choose from here in Chicago. Moving on. Speaking of Three Floyds, how are beers like Three Floyds able to command such premium pricing? Is it really that much better or good marketing?
Probably. I mean, I love Three Floyds and I love Zombie Dust, so I'm not hating on them, but I think it's probably scarcity in marketing, right? Like if it's scarce, and a great example, this Ballast Point Sculpin, they were selling 6-packs of Sculpin IPA for $16, which is why they demanded the premium price. Without nerding out, there was a sale, and now they're owned by Kings and Convicts, a small, it's like shocking. But I digress. The bottom line is I think scarcity in marketing that really catch the premium, because there's so many great APAs, IPAs, beers on the market that to really be able to ask a premium is tough. You know, for as much as I love Zombie Dust, I could replace it with a lot of other beers and be very, very happy.
Right on. So similar question, but things that I've actually never heard of. Are beers like Sink the Bismarck and Tactical Nuclear Penguin worth the price? Very specific.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to Google these beers. I'm vaguely familiar with them. Sink the Bismarck. We're gonna do this live.
It was asked by Mike Hill.
Brewdog.
I've heard of Brewdog.
Oh, is this one of the
Yeah, I thought Sink the Biz was an IU game as well.
Oh,
and I played
41%
it.
alcohol by volume. Got it. This is like a Sam Adams Utopia questions. So like for those of you that don't remember when I was like alcohol, they kind of peak around 14, 15%. You can do other methods and you can scrape off, like for example, you can freeze beer and then scrape off the ice. The water will freeze and the alcohol will be left, and then raise the alcohol. So Sam Adams does this, and they have Utopia series that's kind of similar. These really high alcoholic. The Sink the Bismarck was 41% alcohol by volume that I just checked, making it basically a spirit, right? Like it's no, in my opinion, it's no longer a beer. And in my opinion, I don't know how much I'd try it. Would I buy it? Probably not. Like I know the Utopias are like $200 a bottle. I tried the Utopias. It was pretty good. I mean, it was certainly interesting. It wasn't worth $200 a bottle, in my opinion. Everybody's going to change. I think, brew dogs talk about marketing, right? Like they're expert marketers. They brew good beers too. So I'm not trying to hate, but it's a way for breweries to kind of get their name out there in that sense. I'm glad that they do it to push the envelope and see what they can do, but I'm not going to be buying that beer anytime soon. The only expensive beer that I did buy was the Moody Tongue here in Chicago. They do a truffle beer. It was kind of fun. It's super expensive, another like $100 bottle of beer. I just bought a tasting glass for like $20. It was worth it. I don't know if next time I'll do it, but it was neat to see. So sorry.
Yes. Somebody said it's 82 proof. No, thank you.
Yeah, that's basically a spirit at that point, right?
That's interesting.
Yep.
Thanks so much. You've been so informative. Bruce, I do have some breaking news. Breaking news right now. I just got word that the winners of the 50-50 raffle, Lionel and Mary Go, have generously donated their winnings back to the ULBGC for a total of $3,005. And our total fundraising for tonight is $16,800. So thank you so much to everyone who donated. You guys are amazing. Thank you all for joining us virtually tonight. I hope our event inspired and led you to make our neighborhoods, city, and state and world a better place for the next 100 years and beyond. I hope to see you virtually and one day in person at the Union League Boys and Girls Clubs. We appreciate you so much. And also, as see you, support our youth. We appreciate you, and we hope to see you in person, such as at the virtual gala on Saturday, November 7th. And as Santa, I want to say, also ask you to consider supporting the Associate Board Holiday Party fundraiser later this year. More information about both events will be emailed soon, so please be on the lookout and follow us on Facebook and Instagram to keep informed. Both of the links to our social media accounts will be provided in Zoom chat now as well. Sorry, I've been drinking. Before we go, I would like to recognize the Associate Board Committee members, and especially the Summer Events Task Force, the trustees, our President and CEO, Marianne Mayon Hewells, and our Board of Trustees, brand new President, Cindy Doherty, and everyone else who helped make this event happen. And I would specifically like to thank Logan Hageman for all his patience and hard work helping the Associate Board always get the job done. Also, thank you again to our generous sponsors, Grubhub and Ruben Digital. As you can see, everyone has worked really hard for this event to be possible, and I would like us to thank them with a final round of applause. Thank you again for attending, drinking, and donating tonight. And remember, together we are changing lives. And one last time, raise your drink to the kids. Good night, everyone. Seriously, thank you so much. You guys are the best, and we appreciate every one of you for helping us out. And thanks so much, everybody. Cheers. Have a pleasant evening and a great tomorrow.